Hello, everyone. Welcome, and thanks for coming to the first session of Explore. Glad you're here and awake, and hopefully all your travels were uneventful. I'm Nick Kuhn. I do tech marketing at VMware Tanzu. And before working at VMware, I actually worked at a large retailer for about 13 and a half years, running these products at scale. So I have some real world knowledge and can share examples there and needed as well. With me on the stage is Gregory here.
Hey, hello everyone. Gregory Green. I am a solution architect, and I specialize in telling our customers how cool our data products are in the Tanzu division of VMware, and that won me another ticket to Explore. And I'm excited to be here, honored to be with you today.
All right, thank you. All right, I'll run the first part of this session. I'm going to set the stage with some level set in here. I guess I have an agenda slide, so let's go to that. How about that? First and foremost, we have a disclaimer here. I don't think we're going to be talking about anything disclaimer worthy, but just in case, that's there. Just a quick agenda. It's a simple agenda. We're going to talk about a quick introduction to Tanzu Platform. I'm going to show that in action. Then we're going to flip over to Gregory. He's going to tell you all about Tanzu and data intelligence and do some demos. We actually have some pretty advanced demos that Gregory has written. That's kind of like the second half of the stage of the show. And then if we have time available, this is a 90-minute session, so we're going to do the best to cram as much possible in. We're going to complete our demos, and then we'll go into debugging and try to break things and see how we can do monitoring and observability within the platform as well. Since this is a long session, if you have questions, raise your hand, let us know. You keep it interactive. That should be helpful. But first and foremost, do you all know what Tanzu is? Do you use any Tanzu products? Raise your hands, anybody? All right, we got some hands. All right, that's good. Sometimes it's no hands, so it's like, okay, well, we gotta judge the audience here a bit. But just a quick view of what we're viewing here within Tanzu. When we look at Tanzu and VCF, Tanzu is kind of these top layers that serve application services, data services, now AI services, and kind of really layer on top of VCF and really make that kind of true private cloud experience. And kind of more what I mean by that. And then also by that, we have millions of apps in production with Tanzu Platform across scale, because this Tanzu Platform has been around for a decade, and a lot of it's based on open source technology, Cloud Foundry. So it's been proven for quite some time. It's really that platform as a service space that's been battle tested. Additionally, Tanzu is the maintainer and kind of operator of the Spring Java framework. So it's the number one framework within the Java ecosystem. We actually maintain some of the official SDKs for this new thing called the MCP protocol, which you'll see in a little bit here. And then we also we have our Tanzu and data intelligence suite, which actually is being officially announced tomorrow. So you get a little bit of a preview here, but it's a collection of a lot of our core Tanzu data products, and we'll cover that more later as well. But then what I really mean about that, the slide was a little bit out of order, so the transition was weird, but I apologize. But the Tanzu platform being that platform as a service layer. So if you look at a public cloud provider like Azure or Google, they have these app services, these platform as a service layers like Google App Engine or Google Cloud Run, Azure App Service. That is what the equivalent is to that Tanzu platform is on top of VCF. So if we're looking to have a full stack competition against those, Tanzu platform plus VCF and our data services really help compete there and provide that whole kind of private stack, as you will, in the private cloud. And what I really like too about what we've seen within the platform as a service layer, it's a really kind of simplified approach for developers, but that eases the burden of operations and engineering. So we have our platform engineering teams that run Tanzu Platform at scale. We could easily see a developer to engineer ratio of 200 to 1, where a platform engineer can support up to 200 plus developers. I was in one of those camps. We were actually more in the 500 to 1 where I worked, and some of our customers are in the thousands to 1. So it's a very efficient platform. The teams that run it are very thin and lean, especially when we compare it to some other alternative platforms. Now, what's really kind of the beauty of Tanzu Platform is this command called cf push, and I'll be doing a full demo here, but it's really going to get that code to production in a matter of minutes, and you can take your source code and get it to production. It's going to build everything for it. I'm probably just going to flip over to the demo now, I think, and let's talk about that. So the names will be a little bit different here, and it's a little washed out on the screen, but we're going to be deploying some web services, some large language models, some database services, MCP servers, and that's all going to be on the platform, and we'll kind of see that here. So let's get into it. All right, now let's break out of presentation mode. All right, so refresh. Hopefully I haven't timed out. Okay, so this view right here, does that look okay? Is the screen okay for everyone? Okay, and if I need to zoom in, just let me know. But this is our application manager screen. This is kind of like the developer view where developers get access to just enough infrastructure to deploy their code and become productive. But I'm in the admin view, so I see all the orgs and spaces because this is my environment, and we have a lot of different people using it here. But in a real world scenario, an org may be like a line of business, like manufacturing or HR or e-commerce. And then within those orgs, you have different spaces, and those are usually potentially teams in those lines of business, that type of thing. And we actually, this environment is like hooked up to our demo environment in the hub. So if you want to play with it live, we have live demo stations. So if you like what you see here, you can go to the expo hall and check us out there as well. But that's just kind of the view, and that org and space construct is really beneficial for organizations because it allows it to be a true multi-tenant PaaS where you can have these singular type of deployments supporting thousands or tens of thousands of applications at once. All right, so if we go to explore 90 minutes. So I created a new org and a new space for this, and it's loading. We'll give it a second to load. But we're going to create, first and foremost, a database, and we're going to go from there. All right, so I've got my Tanzu chat demo. I'm going to go into this space. So I'm a developer. I have nothing deployed. I have no apps deployed. But I know I need a database. Let's refresh. I think it timed out a little bit here on me. Are we still connected? Beauty of doing a live demo. Come on, internet. Okay, well, we're going to make a new database. I don't know. Okay, it's on. I'm going to do 90 minutes database 2 here. So as part of that, we have this marketplace view within the platform. So with, in addition to application runtimes, we can deploy many different services. But I need to get a Postgres database wired up. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. And I'm going to create this first plan. It's a smaller plan. And I'm going to call this 90 min DB2. And we'll get that cooking. And what's going on there is now it's going to talk to the VCF. It's going to create a VM. It's going to from like a golden template, and it's going to make it a Postgres database, wire that all up, and then inject it into the platform so that we can bind to it from the application layer. So while that's cooking, I'm going to go and check out some application code here. All right, so I have two apps. I have the Tanzu Chat app and the Time MCP Server app. So we're going to push those applications to the platform, and we're going to do things with them, and we'll go from there. So let's just do a CF apps. Hopefully I'm still connected here. We have some network slowness here for sure, but let me deactivate this. I'll try it again. Okay. All right, just need to reset my VPN. Okay, so we know no apps detected. That's good. All right, so now go back to my scripts. I'm going to target our Oregon space and make sure that's good. And go to this directory. All right, so we're in our Tanzu chat directory. I'm going to go ahead and hit CF push, and we're going to talk about that. And what's going on here is that slide that we saw before, it's a kind of a live manifestation of it, where it's detecting that it's a Java application, because I have a Java source code, a .jar file compiled, and it's going to push that to the platform. So it's going to send it up there, and it's going to start running the build pack process and get that going. And we might struggle a little bit doing that here, so we're uploading those files. And it's going to get there, get that jar file, and get that build pack process fired up. We'll start to see when that starts going. We'll see text in there and says Java build pack detected. We'll see things like we'll do in the Java memory calculator, certificates, ingress controller, like certs. That's all getting just wired up by default from the platform. And we're going really slow today. So were you networked in here? No, you're not. Okay. All right, that's pushing. I might have to drop off the VPN and hit it straight. So let's see, that's wiring up here. We'll check on our database. Okay, that's provisioning. That's good. And we see that memory calculator, everything going properly, uploading to the platform. And once this finishes, I'm going to try to drop off and see if that's any better. See if we get any better results here. That's starting to boot up. I guess I could also try to hotspot off my phone. That might be better. Conference Wi-Fi is always fun. Do we have any questions so far while we wait? Yes? They're totally separate. It's just Harbor is like a completely different beast. So yeah, so yeah, this is. I think it's just similar UI styles, but they're different. All right, so that's pushed. All right, so let's see. Let's see if this will load. All right, let me try to deactivate. Maybe that's better path. Okay, well, we'll do that. All right, so we have our first application pushed. That's ready to go. We'll see that we have application metrics coming in, CPU, memory, disk, request latency, errors, etc. And we have one instance started. If I wanted to, we could scale it up and down. But I'm not going to do that for now. We actually have some more auto-scaling demos later, and we can see the task, everything going up and down. We can see logs. All that stuff is ready to go. And what's great too is that I can just view app and hit this route that's already provisioned for me, and it's ready to go. And I'll zoom that up. Maybe a little bit more. So this looks like a simple chat interface. It's nothing too crazy, but it's an app that we have been building to help demonstrate some AI technology. So let's ask it a question. Hello. No chat model is available, and that is expected. So what on these kind of, I guess, buttons on the side here is that this app can detect if it has a chat model available. It can detect if it has any kind of vector store or embedding model. And if you're not familiar with some of these terminologies, so you're talking about like a large language model, you have chat and tooling functions, different functions. Embedding function is for like processing stuff for retrieval augmented generation. And then that's typically stored in what we call a vector store. We have a Tanzu Postgres does that for us. And Gregory will show you some more demos of that too. We can wire in MCP servers, which I kind of hinted at earlier, but that's really when we talk about agentic AI or tooling or functioning, that's kind of a protocol to do that. And then also this application has a concept of memory, contextual chat memory. And right now it's transient as it doesn't have a database wired up, but that Postgres database that we put in the oven and is cooking will come into play here later. But first and foremost, while that happens, I'm gonna go and get a model here. So in our services, now that we already have an app deployed, I want to expand this functionality. I can just go into new service under my app view here, and I get that marketplace view again. I could select many things here that I want, but I'm going to go into the GenAI and Tanzu Platform application, or that marketplace offering, and I'm going to just select the multi-model RAG plan. So that's going to give me access to an embedding model and a model that is set up for chat and tooling, which is needed. And these are running on Tanzu Platform, so they're not like a SaaS provider. We can also integrate directly with VMware Private AI Foundation if you have that as well. And we kind of have this whole AI brokering story and functionality, so we can really kind of mix and match however you have that available. So let's go ahead and select plan, and I'm just going to call this 90 minute LLMs, and we'll click create. And what's happening here is that it's going to talk to this AI service, and it's going to give me an API key and endpoint that's fronting those models, and that's kind of like a virtual key set. So I don't actually have keys or tokens or any kind of actual credentials to those models that we're running. It's a per developer key that gets generated. It's very useful too for doing like rate limiting and things of that nature, and potentially even like content safety going forward. So that's just kind of some value that layer adds. But let's go ahead and restart that. We're going to restart this application. And why are we restarting the application? Well, because we created a service binding to the app, and the app has code to look for certain environment variables. And if it sees them, it will detect them and then wire them into the app. So we're just restarting that to refresh those variables and have that kind of get new functionality. Now, if we look here, we can see now that we have a chat model defined, and we're talking there, and we should have an embedding model too, so that's good. So let's say hello. I'll just type it again, it's not too hard. Hello, and it's going to be thinking, and it says, hello, how can I assist you today? Great. All right, let's see, what is the current time? And let's see, I can't access real-time data or the current time directly. However, I can help you calculate your time zone if you tell me what it is. That's kind of as expected, right? Because by default, these large language models have a training set or predefined data set, and it's called a cutoff date. And once that cutoff date's over, they have no knowledge of what's happening in the world, right? That's where this thing called MCP comes into play, where you can add additional apps to the platform to help bind that to that large language model and kind of augment that behavior. So let's go ahead and do that now. All right. All right, CF, push. All right, so I'm just pushing another app to the platform. It's also a job application, but its core focus or function is really being a time server. So you can query its endpoint, and it will give you back the current time. And that MCP protocol kind of is like the interaction between the LLM and that time server and how it can interact. So that's loading. It's going a little bit faster now, so that's good. We'll see that same build pack process fire up. And while that happens, let's take a look at some of these environment variables here as we see that binding process when we do that. Okay, hold on. Maybe not. I can't move my screen. Let's refresh my browser. All right, there we go. That was weird. View environment variables. So we can see that this is getting wired up into the application, and that's kind of the beauty of the whole binding service process, where we have references being passed into it. We can see we're getting an endpoint, but what's kind of cool too is that we're seeing this reference to CredHub. Well, that's because we actually have an internal, similar thing to HashiCorp Vault, where it's a secret store, and we can encrypt all these secrets and store them so that the applications can pick them up and use them. But as a user, it's not easy for me to get that. So from a security perspective, if you have a bunch of sensitive data, you can provide an easy way for developers to access to provision and use those databases, but they also don't have an easy way to pull the keys and take it somewhere else type of thing. So that's something that's pretty beneficial, and that's just how that process wires up. Let's go back. All right, this application is started, so that's good. All right, I'm just gonna make it one more thing here. And I just ran a command to create a user provided service. So I'm gonna basically expose that time server that we just created to be called as another service within the platform. If I go back to my app here. So now we have 2 apps running. And if you look at services, that's where that time MCP server is running. So let's go ahead and bind that to our application. So I wanna bind this new service. I'm gonna bind the MCP server. Oh, okay, maybe I need to zoom out a little here. Click bind, I'll click bind, and then restart. So once this has been bound and restart, we should have some new behavior where we could see what the app does next. Survey says, we're getting there. So a lot of these apps are on Git repo, so you can use them as well, and we can go from there. We'll share some links at the end, and if I don't, remind me, and we can bring them up on GitHub. All right, so we're running. Okay, all right, now we should see. All right, well, we have an MCP server, and we can tell it time MCP, get current time. Okay, so now let's see. Copy paste. Oh, that's good. What's the current time, right? So now the model should use this time function and get the current time. All right. Oh yeah, it's UTC. What time is it in Cincinnati? Ohio. I'm from Cincinnati, so that's why I'm doing this right now. I don't know what time it is here. I live on Cincinnati time. Let's see. Okay, 11:22 or 12:22. I think that's right, or 12:23. All right, so it got a little feisty with the response, but 12:22 is pretty close. 12:23. My computer's on Eastern time. All right, so that's kind of an example of how you can use like an MCP server to augment an LLM. Now, there's one other way to do this too. And we can do retrieval augmented generation. So we're gonna go and bind that. We're gonna bind that database that I provisioned. And we're gonna give it a document and it's gonna process it. So we restart. And what I like to use is like a schedule or something like that. So I downloaded my Explore schedule. We're gonna upload that to the application. It's gonna send it to the embedding model to chunk it up into vectors, and then it's gonna push those vectors or that data into Postgres, and then the model can kind of react to it, so to speak. All right, restarted. Let's see. All right, so I've got a PG vector store, which is great. I've got my embedding model. Let's go upload a file. We're gonna go to my Explore schedule here. And it's gonna process this PDF, and I should get it. All right, file uploaded successfully. And now I am Nick Kuhn. When is my first session on Tuesday? We already know what my first session on Monday is, at VMware Explore 2025. So now if everything is working out, it should be able to query those documents and tell me what my first session tomorrow is, because it should be able to read it and process that. And all right, my first session tomorrow is learn all about Tanzu Platform, how you can get there. So yeah, if you want to learn more about some of these things, I have multiple sessions, Meet the Expert sessions tomorrow. You should come check it out, and we'll be happy to have some deep dive conversations. But that's kind of a basic flow of what Tanzu Platform is and how we can easily push apps into production. I'm going to hand it over here to Gregory here. Well, I'll get you back in slideshow mode. All right.
Awesome.
All right. Good?
Yeah.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Nick. Every time you go through your presentation, I think, man, he just showed you a lot in a little bit of time. That's a hard act to follow, but I'm here to do my job, and my assignment is to talk about Tanzu Data Intelligence and how you can use it to build your applications for data management on the platform. Now, when I think about the main categories of modern data that we deal with is either a database, meaning you're basically going to store some information. It could be not just a database, it could be a data store. Data is going to be persisted maybe on disk or in memory. And there's all types of databases for different purposes, like NoSQL databases, caching databases, so on and so forth, right? The other major category that we deal with is messaging, or moving data between applications or between systems, and a whole framework to facilitate the movement of those data. And I just threw that term out there, modern data, but what do I actually mean by modern data? Well, at its core, it's just you have something that makes it easy to provision and manage those databases and those messaging or event streaming based solutions, right? I could think back earlier on my career when I was definitely not doing something that was modern. I can remember we wrote pages and pages of documents to outline how we were going to install our data services. And when it was time to actually install them, somebody would actually print out the document, and you would have somebody that would sometimes type in the commands and had an army of people behind them to double check and triple check all of their mistakes. So that definitely wasn't modern, and I hope that no one here is doing anything like that. So ultimately, you want a platform to be able to manage these data services, because applications should not be managing these data services themselves. They could be delegating them to backend services, right? To handle things in a cloud native fashion, so that whether I'm deploying these services on a private environment or private cloud or public cloud, it works the same for those database and messaging management. Now, as you can guess, our Tanzu Data Intelligence, it handles just about all of those use cases, right? So we have systems that handle messaging or the movement of the data. So if you want to do workflows, if you want to do data ingestion that's orchestrated, if you have different types of databases, like for example, something that handles real-time data or analytical data or data lake houses, we have all of these different options based on how much data you have. How do you want to access this? How fast you want that data in and out, right? So we have the solutions for you. Now, for each one of these solutions that we have in our portfolio, you can install them individually, right? You can do it manually. But we really feel the superpower of using these data services is deploying them on the platform, right? Why, you may ask, is the benefits of deploying it on a platform. So again, it just reduces the time from you actually want a database or a messaging solution to actually provision. Nick just provisioned a couple of data services in just a couple of minutes, right? And I'll tell you, trust me, that person that was in the hot seat that I talked about, they do not want to spend one more day trying to install this data service. So you give it a platform where you can point and click to create these data services, Or you can have simple command line interfaces. So for example, this is a command line interface to create a Postgres or a messaging solution or other types of data services, the CF create command. And it not only provisions them, but it has baked in best knowledge or best practice knowledge that knows the settings, the production tested settings for your Postgres, for example. It knows how to scale it just as easy as it can scale up your applications. And it works the same on any environment. And Nick showed you how the framework injected the credentials to your applications, right? So your applications don't need to do like anti-patterns, like hard-coding credentials, and then how do you change the credentials? Well, the framework handles rotations and all of that stuff for you, right? So again, it's a standard way to do it to minimize risk and security vulnerabilities. And you could just bind a service to the app, and the app, the service or the platform will just give the app the credentials at runtime. And ultimately, all of these things just saves you time and ultimately money, right? So it makes it easy to not only create, but maintain them, upgrade them anywhere. Now, we're gonna actually build an application, right? So we're gonna build a retail-based application. So we're gonna use these various data and messaging solutions, starting with most applications need some sort of database, some sort of relational database. And a perfect example, a perfect choice is either Postgres or MySQL, right? Because they're asset compliant, meaning they keep the data safe, right? For years, MySQL has been the most popular open source database. And just recently, Postgres overtook it as kind of the most popular open source database. It's actually my personal favorite. And again, because they support SQL, right? Structured query language to be able to do various types of ways to insert or get out that data. Now, suppose you started out with your retail-based application, and maybe you had like hundreds of users and it worked well. But maybe now you're successful and it scales to maybe 500 users, thousands of users, and maybe potentially you're going up to thousands or millions of transactions per second. So how do you scale poor little MySQL or Postgres to millions of transactions per second? You could do it, but it's just not easy. So what you could do is you can introduce a cache, right? An in-memory solution. Because most data access patterns for an application are more read-heavy than write-heavy. And since you're reading from in memory from these caching-based solutions, then it makes the read access really fast. I'm talking about sub-milliseconds response times, right? So a perfect example or a perfect choice for an in-memory solution is Valkey, which is based on Redis, or GemFire, right? GemFire is really like an advanced messaging solution. By show of hands, has anybody ever heard of GemFire before? Okay, we got a couple of hands in the room. You guys make me feel better, right? It is used by many different, or it's used by a significant number of high-profile financial customers for data at scale. Again, like sub-millisecond response times for thousands of transactions per second, right, for low latency. So now, okay, you got your cache, you got your relational database, and you are, again, more and more successful. Now, everybody wants to sell their products on your retail-based application, right? So they want to push products, customer orders, all types of information to your infrastructure, right? So again, how do you handle that in a scalable way so that you don't overwhelm your database that's keeping your data safe and your caching that is handling those read-only operations? Well, you can introduce a messaging solution, right? And my favorite messaging solution is RabbitMQ, extremely popular and scalable. There is a newer protocol in RabbitMQ that handles event streaming use cases. So some of the public benchmark numbers for RabbitMQ streamings was up to 17 million messages per second. So it should be able to handle ingesting that data, and you can now process that information in an asynchronous manner. So for example, you can get it into RabbitMQ really, really fast. If you can't save that data as fast into Postgres, you could use Rabbit as a buffering layer, right? So it can just consume your apps, this retail-based apps, you can consume asynchronously from Rabbit at whatever rate you can insert into your relational database. But now, maybe you've gotten, you introduced your cache, you introduced your database, but you're still not getting the performance you want because, again, you have one app. So what you could do is you could start doing something a little bit clever. You can separate your read concerns from your write concerns, right? Because I mentioned how most of the write operations, right, can be handled by the cache. And your read access can be handled by your cache. And then you can separate your write operations into a data pipeline, and you can have it deployed and orchestrated using something called Tanzu Data Flow. So let's suppose I have a source application, and that's going to accept information from the external system. Maybe it exposes an HTTP endpoint, or maybe it exposes a TCP-based interface to accept things like CSV data that's uploaded from the stores, and then you have an analytical app that saves that data into Postgres, and then also you have a designated app that's going to populate that data into the cache, and you wire them all up together using RabbitMQ. And now that you have your data pipeline, now you can easily introduce artificial intelligence concerns, right? So maybe you introduce natural language processing. So for example, if you are accepting things like customer reviews or product reviews, you can determine the sentiment of those product reviews. You could do things like, for example, if customers always order peanut butter and jelly together, and maybe one time they only order peanut butter, you can give them a real-time promotion, and you can use an AI to say, okay, what kind of promotion or what kind of wording can I give to this user to make sure that they get that peanut butter and jelly together? And if the models are producing incorrect output, then you can utilize a vector database, right? So you can save some context in the vector database to improve the output of those models. So I did a lot of talking. So I'm going to actually show you this in a demo, right? So in my environment, I have I have the web application on the left-hand side. This is the web application, and I have the source application. And the web application, can you see that okay? Is it okay? Okay. So again, I loaded some, I don't have any products in my cache, everything's empty. But what I could do is I can utilize the source application. So this is going to load some products, and it's going to go through that data pipeline. It's going to use RabbitMQ. It's going through some applications in the backend, and eventually, the data is going to get to the web application, right? Reading it from the cache, right? So I loaded some products. I can also load some orders. So when I loaded some orders, it figured out. So there's an analytical app that I mentioned in the background. Let me actually show you the analytical app. This is actually doing the analytics to figure out the customer favorites. So what I could do is I have the command line interface, and Nick gave me a space in his environment. He's a very nice guy. He gave me actually multiple spaces in his environment. So in one of these spaces, I have the analytical app. So I'm just looking at the logs for this app. I'm also going to look at the source app. So as data is coming over the scene, so if I go back here and I submit some orders, I will see eventually the data being sent to the source application, and it's being sent to the analytical application. And trust me, it's just doing some SQL operations, trying to figure out the favorites. And there is something down here where it's trying to figure out a recommendation for the user. So for example, again, as I mentioned, this user always orders peanut butter and jelly together. So for one order, I have SKU number 1. So I'm only ordering peanut butter, right? So if I look at the output in the log, again, it figured out that, again, I should provide them a promotion for jelly, right? And the promotion actually talked to a chat AI model to say, hey, give me the wording for this. So if I go back to the app, yes, this is the promotion that it gave me, right? It says, Nyla, try jelly, right? So again, you could just customize, you could do inventive things with these chat models. The other thing I wanted to show you is the customer reviews. So in this case, I'm submitting the customer review, and the analytical app, again, it's using a model. It's going to try to figure out the sentiment, right? So it's going to try to figure out the sentiment for the messages, I love peanut butter, I love jelly. So let's see, it already figured out the sentiment for a couple of those. So in this case, when I look for the products, so I see that it got the sentiment and it figured out it was positive. If I look for jelly, if I look for peanut butter, the peanut butter, I love peanut butter, makes sense, it's all positive. Now let's look for meatloaf. So the meatloaf comment was positive also. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Now, this comment is actually an inside joke where the son is trolling the mom is selling the meatloaf, so it's actually a negative sentiment. So what we could do is we can submit context to the RAG database, and we can tell the model at runtime that actually this is a negative sentiment, right? So again, this saves this data into Postgres as the vector database, and now when I submit another review, now when it's analyzing the sentiment, again, it's going to use the model, and this time it's figured out that the sentiment is negative, right, based on the context. So if I do a search here, now we see that it figured out this is a negative sentiment. This is great, right? So now what I want to do is I want to tear this down, and I want to rebuild it just to show you, get a feel for how it is to rebuild this particular environment. I have my notes here to tear down the environment. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing the command line interfaces to delete all of these applications. I can absolutely do this using the UI, and I'm going to jump in some cases from using the UI in the command line interface. Everything starts with the CF command, right? So in this case, I'm deleting the applications by their names. The -F option is, by default, when you delete an app, it's going to ask you, do you really want to delete this app? So I just bypass the prompt. So when I go back to the source app, so I see that the source app is gone and the web app, they're all gone. So now let's go ahead and I can also see that view of the apps when I do a CF apps. I have 2 utility apps that I'm going to ignore for now. But again, I'm now going to start deploying the other apps. Now, the question was, okay, where are one of you had a question about where are these apps? Now, these apps, you can push these apps from building from a local machine or from Artifactory and things like that, right? So I have them all built on my local machine. So when I'm actually pushing them, again, I'm specifying the name of the app, but I'm also specifying some metadata about this app in something called a YAML. I'll look at that in a minute. I'm also telling the platform that these are Java-based applications. And in addition to the jar, the name or location of the jar. So this is what my manifest looks like. Nick already showed you one, but I'm just going to highlight. Again, you can specify things like how much memory you want the platform to provide, and other settings like the log limits and things like that. And Nick showed you how to bind a service to an app so that it can inject all of those credentials. You can automate that by just having this YAML and just list out the services that you want this application to be bind to also. You can give it any argument, runtime argument. You can give it environment variables. Now, this particular app, the web app, it supports both Redis/Valkey and GemFire. So if I needed to change the behavior via an environment variable, I can absolutely do that by specifying that in the manifest. Now, the services that I have were already pre-created. And Nick showed you how to create the service using the UI. I'm just going to show you how to create the service using the command line interface. Now, in this case, I have another space that Nick gave me to make this a little bit bigger. In this space, again, I have some services, but I'm going to create 2 GenAI services, right? So the GenAI services, I can specify what model that I want to use, right? So there's all different types of models, and some of them are better for different use cases. I have the Llama 3 model, which is, again, it's a large language model. It's kind of a general purpose. I think it's really, really good, like almost having like a private a ChatGPT in your environment. And I also have a separate model which does the embedding, God bless you, which is switching or changing the sentiment or the customer comments to a numerical format, so that when I'm doing the RAG and I'm trying to figure out the context, whether that comment was negative or positive based on the context, again, all of that math conversion is governed by the embedding model, right? So that's how easy it is to create services, right? So I just created 2 services. And I see that here they are created here, right? The chat model and the embedding model. All right, so let's go back to the CF. Let's see if we are almost done. We're at the point where we are pushing the analytical app. So I can also look at these apps and the status of these apps in AppsMan. So let me go ahead and my session timeout. Let me go ahead and log back in. And yes, make sure I'm in the right space. All right, so yeah, so some of the apps are still in the process of being started. Some of them are running. And as Nick showed you, I can be able to move this over a little bit. So the web app is up and running. Now I can click on the web app and I can see statistics about this app, right? How much memory is being used, CPU, so on and so forth, disk is being used. This is a great place to go if you're ever having any issues with these particular apps. I see I have 1 instance of this app, and Nick mentioned how you can scale up the instances of the apps. I can look at the logs. Again, I can just browse the logs. I see I don't have any errors. This is all good. Now, one thing that's also cool is that these are all Spring Boot-based apps. Now, the platform, it supports just about any programming language that can be containerized. Anything that has an OCI or a Docker container, you can push to the platform, right? And you still get that same view of looking at how much memory is using CPU and so on and so forth, and looking at the logs, right? But when you have a Spring app, again, this platform has some additional benefits because it knows the secret sauce about Spring apps, right? So it knows, for example, how to look at the threads within the Spring Boot application, right? So if I was getting some strange behavior in this apps, I can see if there are threads that were blocked. I could do things like I can dump out the threads using a thread dump. So again, like I don't have to go into the shell interface into where these apps are running to get the thread dumps, right? I can get it all from the platform itself. Let's see where we are. So, and it exposed each one of those apps, especially for the web-based applications, it's going to expose a load balance endpoint for me, right? So I could just click on the endpoints to see, so the app is back up and running. Let me just close this. All right, so this app is back up and running, and it already got some data. I didn't clear out the data in the databases, so the data is just using the data that was already there, right? Let me see, did it finish? Yeah, so it finished. It deployed all of our apps. Now, another thing that we could do is, again, remember I mentioned how I had a data pipeline, right, for the write-based operations, right? And again, I deployed these manually using the CF push command. Another way you can deploy them is using data flow. And hopefully you'll see some of the benefits of deploying it using data flow. So let me go ahead and switch the view. So I'll go into my other space. And here is the services in the other space. And you see there's something called Data Flow Server. So in Data Flow Server, I can click on Manage, and this will give me a user interface into Spring Cloud Data Flow. So what I did was I registered these apps, both the web app and all of the apps that make up the data pipeline, I already registered in Spring Cloud Data Flow. And then what I could do is I can go in here and I can create a stream. Now, I could drag each one of these boxes on the left-hand side. They're actually an app. So I can drag and drop, and I can build my pipeline. So, for example, I want to take the retail app, and I wanted to maybe do some processing in between, maybe do like some Groovy or some Python coding to change some data as it goes over the streams. I can absolutely do that. But I already have the definition of this save. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this definition, and I'm going to paste it in. Yeah, so now I can basically just use data flow to create this pipeline for me. And instead of kind of doing individual CF push commands, I can deploy them all together as a stream. And I can provide, instead of having manifest files, I can provide, just using the UI, provide the properties like, for example, which services it's using, and all types of other properties that it needs, right, in order that we're going to be passed in to the applications at runtime, right? So it's just another way to deploy these. Now, the reason I like this particular way to deploy it is because, again, when it actually gets to the point where you deploy it, you actually see the pipeline. So it's kind of like self-documenting the data pipelines, right? So you can see kind of how they interacted. So let's give that some time to deploy. Now, while that's deploying, now we're going to do some scalability testing, right? So I'm going to go back to the other apps. And again, if there's any questions so far? Okay, tracking okay? All right, I see smiles at least. I didn't see any thumbs up, but I see some smiles. Good. All right, so we got the two sets of apps deploying. One in data flow, I'm deploying them, and now we have the apps that I use the CF push command with. Now, what I want to do is I want to show you how easy it is to scale up these applications. So to scale it up, I'm going to start, let's refresh, and I'll start the logs for the analytical app. I'll start the log for the source app, just so you can see kind of what it's doing under the covers. And I'm going to be loading products. So essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to be loading up more than 500 products. I'm going to keep loading it, right? So I'm going to put pressure on the infrastructure. And now behind the scenes, this is using RabbitMQ, right? So this is the RabbitMQ management console. So the RabbitMQ management console, I'm able to see things like how many messages per second are being sent over the wire. There's something called exchanges, which are sort of like topics for sending information. And there's queues, which are the destinations for these messages to be picked up by the applications, right? And for some of these queues, for example, I have a dead letter queue. If there were any errors, I can look at the dead letter queue. So for example, I see that there was one error, and I can say, get the error, and I can see there was some error with an insert statement with an earlier pipeline, right? So you could do some debugging with the console also, right? So again, I told you that I was going to put some pressure on the system. To put some pressure on the system, I have this script. And this script is basically just going to, in a loop, it's going to keep publishing a whole bunch of products. If I go back to the management console in RabbitMQ, I see that the number of messages per second is starting to rise, right? And yeah, so that will continue to rise. And I also see, if I click on the queues and streams, I also see that there should be some queues where the number of queues or the number of messages in the queues are building up. Yeah, so there's, for example, there's one queue. Yeah, so this one has 3. But the system is doing a pretty good job of keeping up with the rate. I could also try to, let's copy and paste this. Okay. And let's just paste a whole bunch of ones in here, and I'll just keep clicking. Again, and you'll see what the analytical app is doing. It's right, the analytical apps, the source app, they're pretty busy trying to keep up with all of the products that I'm putting in the system. And again, okay, it's now what I can do is I can put in a scalability rule. So if I go back to, let's go back to this view, and if I want to scale up the sync app, again, I see the memory. I will click on activate autoscaling. So when I'm activating autoscaling, I can specify things like, let me make this a little bit bigger. I can add a rule so I can scale based on how much memory is being used, CPU being used, so on and so forth. But also, this knows that's using RabbitMQ under the cover. So I can scale based on how many messages are in the queue. So the queue, again, that I'm using, that should be backed up is this queue. So if I copy and paste this queue name, and let's suppose we want to scale up scale down if it's less than 5, but if it's more than 10, we'll scale up. We'll save this. Maybe I'll put the minimum number of instances as 2, but I can also scale up to 5 and I'll apply changes. Okay. And when I go back to this view for number of instances, now you see that it's scaled up from 1 instance to multiple instances. So there's 2 instances right now. And if I go back to the thread view, again, in the thread view, I can toggle between instances. So that's pretty much all I wanted to show for this one. Maybe we could show some more while this is going, this performance test is going, maybe we show some other things in the background.
Yeah. We'll break out the slides. Actually, we'll go back here. Show, that's me. All right. All right, so I'm going to flash this up really quickly, and then we're going to get to some of the debugging. I run a podcast on Cloud Foundry called Cloud Foundry Weekly. If you're interested in what we talk about, you should check that out. And then also, okay, that's all I have. So yeah, scan that and register, like, and subscribe. That'd be great, okay? But someone asked about, before we get into it, I want to, because otherwise I'll forget, about the source code. So if you want to like recreate like that first demo that we did from scratch, we actually have like an AI starter kit that you can consume. And if you have an existing Broadcom portal license thingy, you can go register and get a Tanzu like 90-day trial if you don't have Tanzu already, and then you can get access to the bits. But a colleague of mine, Keith Lee, he actually wrote that. And then it's actually based on some scripts that William Lamb wrote a while ago. So it's a like kind of a simplified PowerShell installer to kind of bootstrap the whole platform with just a few inputs and kind of get it running on your system. And I know somebody who's actually used it already in the back there as a real world sample. So if you have any questions, you can ask him. But let me get that GitHub link too for you here. And do we really, like, if you guys want to see some really things, we could really, like, we know how to break this really bad too. So we found out in our testing where everything breaks. But if I need to break out of this, okay. All right. GitHub.
Let me know if you want me to break it.
Yeah. That's the wrong Keith Lee. Am I in my GitHub? Yes, you should start to break it.
Okay, start breaking it?
Yeah.
All right, Nick has given me permission to break the system.
Well, I look for my stars and my GitHubs. All right. Come on. All right, so this is, I'll make a new tab.
Right. While you're doing that, let me show them data flow.
Yeah.
And while Nick is doing that, I just want remember I deployed the pipeline using data flow. I just want to circle back to there so you can see that I'm going to do a refresh. You'll see that it's now deployed. And what's cool about this is I can now. Remember, I did a CF log, and I can look at the log file. I can actually look through the log files all from this UI. So if there is something happening in the pipeline, so for example, if there's an issue with the analytical app, I can actually just look at the logs right here, right? So it's all nice, at least for one data pipeline, I can look at everything all from one spot. And this had a separate UI. Let me know when you're ready.
Yeah.
This had a separate UI. So again, this deploy, when I deployed this, I basically changed the prefix. So this is the separate source space application, and that was deployed by Dataflow. And this is where's the web application? Yeah, this is the web application. All right. So again, this is just a separate instance, right? So this one is empty. I can go to the source application. I can submit some products. All right. So yeah, the basics work. And again, I can look at the data pipeline logs from here. Actually, let me submit some more stuff. So I submit some orders. I'll go to this pipeline. So again, looking at what did the analytical app do for the most recent, requests, right? Again, all of the logging right here. Very convenient.
Perfect. All right, we can switch back to here. We might not be able to get as deep as I wanted to because my VPN is still on the struggle bus. So let me deactivate that and try to refresh. All right, so if we look about the platform installer, if you wanted to give this a try, Keith Richard Lee, has his GitHub handle. He's got that ready to set up for you. It's a pretty simplified guide. It's very much in the style of like William Lamb, if you've used any of his scripts. It gives you all the kind of details that you would need from like a compute perspective, networking, et cetera, and all the files that you would download from, the Broadcom portal, and then you can kind of scroll through your variables here as well, and kind of go from there. But essentially, you need to bootstrap an OVA appliance and then configure it, and then it will just install everything. And then you could potentially recreate that demo that I did earlier. There's even steps on how to download the sample applications and push them to your platform down in here, that type of thing. So give that a try if you're interested, and let us know. But let's see here. So have you pushed a lot of making my lab angry here. Let's see here. How did I do that? Hold on. Let me break out a full screen here. This laptop has really struggled today.
Any more questions for?
All right. All right, so one thing too that we noticed is that since you started pushing, like, was that orders that really caused the issue? Is that because we started doing this analytical process? I think when we started doing the first demo, you're like, I'm gonna push 1,000 orders. And he's like, we're looking, I was like, it's not happening. And I was like, look at the logs, like, oh, well, you just put a lot of workload on that large language model. So maybe we shouldn't do that all at once, right? So we have some metrics and some telemetry we can see too to help track, because this is a relatively new field of like running production LLMs and tracking it and seeing what's going on. But we should see some metrics here where we're getting called here, and we're actually, this platform's getting called by many different systems here. Maybe I should do the last 15 minutes, perhaps, maybe the last 30 minutes. But yeah, we can see some models ramping up. So that orange model, if I'm reading that correct, that's that llama model getting called. We can see like input-output tokens, tokens by client application. We can kind of see performance as well. So I have a lot of models in here, so we can start to see that. Nothing too crazy right now coming in the pipe. Model inference by time, seconds isn't necessarily terrible if it's under too much of a load. And then essentially too, so like this AI server runs an open AI compatible API. So we have all these different endpoints that we can track. And we also are then tracking all the health of the AI server itself as well. JVM stats, database connection timings, all that fun stuff. So you see all that happening as well within this system. And additionally, we have dashboards for like Rabbit as well. I think it was maybe in the clusters overview. I don't know. We have many different dashboards here. Maybe, was it overview perhaps? Yeah, so we can see messages coming in and out of different systems. Looks like I'm still missing some data on certain things here, but we could still see, get some pretty in-depth view of those Rabbit clusters that are getting deployed. We have similar views for like MySQL and Postgres and such. So just another kind of tidbit there about how to help troubleshoot some of these things and go from there. Now, we've spoken for a little bit over an hour now. Are there any questions? Do you have anything that you want to see? We can keep talking, but at the same time, I know it's early in the morning, and we can take it whatever direction you'd like. If there's any questions.
Showing a little bit of autoscaling. How about if there's a new Postgres service version that you need to push out?
Oh, it's like if there's a new version of Postgres, you want to roll out that? Yeah, so that part of that here too is, so I can bring up another screen. Bookmarks, I need those.
and you're going to show them something. But I'll also say that, so upgrades for all of the services are pretty much seamless. You could do like blue-green deployments, you could do vertically scaling, and it minimizes the downtime for your application instances, especially when you're using that's a relational database, right? So if you're using things like cache, it has more distributed instances. We have HA for Postgres, so all of those things are kind of baked in to the plans for the databases.
Yeah. So, and from like if we haven't showed really any of the operations views. So we have the apps manager, which is more from the development side, but then we have the ops man, which is kind of where like the platform engineers live. And then in this environment, I have all these tiles installed. But like if we look at Postgres, for instance, this is where the platform engineer will define what gets deployed and what's available in that marketplace. So if we go to on-demand plans, if we wanted to rev a version of Postgres, it would actually pop up in here. And we actually did this with the MySQL tile as well, but we're not changing the version of Postgres right now currently. But if there was an update where like it was a big migration of, what was it? It was like MySQL 5 to 8 or something like that. It was a little bit ago, but in the tile, it had a drop down where you could say you want to make a plan that's default 8 or default 5. And then there's something called, you can do like a CF service instance upgrade, where when you define that new plan, it could just in place upgrade the database to 8. Now, we recommend like that, it's like a on app, like there are commands to say force the infrastructure to say, make all these plans MySQL 8, but we realize that could be problematic for apps, as like those typically big database upgrades could potentially cause issues. And they want to like test their app code out. So like you can also do it on demand per service instance, and then kind of like as a, from a platform engineering perspective, like encourage your developers to, hey, we have like, you can run this command to upgrade to 8, we need to upgrade. Please do that in your like, change window in your test environments. Make sure your app doesn't break when it hits the new version of MySQL. Maybe there's some new weird, API call or call back that's in that new version that's not in the old version, that type of thing. And that's kind of how we handle those like big scale migrations. Now if it's like a sub patch, that just gets rolled out and gets applied like on the next apply changes. And kind of some of the infrastructure like behind the scenes, there's this little thing called Bosh, which is like an infrastructure orchestrator that kind of gets deployed and manages everything and recreates it. Like you can have it recreate the whole environment live and do all kinds of pretty cool things around that as well. Hopefully that answers. Does that answer your question? Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
This might be kind of a given, but are we able to add customer service templates to the marketplace?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Are we able to add like custom services in the marketplace, and does that stay local, or would that get broadcast?
Like build your own service type of thing?
Define service.
Yeah. So you can use what we did earlier. We had the MCP server and actually created a user-provided service. So that's essentially like a custom service. Typically, that's like an off-platform database like Oracle or like some IBM thing that you can give it this big block of all these connection strings or whatever. Like it's the JDBC connection string or credentials. And then that just gets wired in to your app, and then the app can read that just like any other on-platform database. Now we are announcing tomorrow-ish, part of Tanzu Platform 10.3, we also are gonna have a new kind of services flow that you can publish that in the marketplace. And we have a new hub view too, which I can show in a minute, where those would be exposed as well to kind of enhance that experience for even more. So you could provide your own service there, and then other people in your organization can use that as a service as well. So, any other questions? No? All right, let me bring up Hub really quick too, and then we'll go from there. Hopefully it lets me load it. I think too many people are using my lab this morning. Let me zoom out. I'm a little too zoomed in. But this is one of our newer views too, and this is kind of like our next generation view. Let me zoom in a little here. That's let me zoom out. All right, I gotta do it just enough where it doesn't squish up. But a lot of these, they add I think maybe long term, you'll see the operations, ops man and apps man kind of merge into this new UI. But what we already have today is some of those like Health Watch, those Grafana style views are coming into here as well. And what's great about this is it's a multi-foundation view, because before those are all like individually managed. So if I have 100 foundations, I have 100 ops managers, 100 apps managers, and like problems, right? So now you have a singular view that you can see, and you can kind of see some of these views come into play here, where I can show foundations as well, where I can see I actually have 2 foundations wired up into here, and I apologize, text is a little hard to read. I'll zoom in here and make it a little kind of blocky. But I have my NDC foundation and my TDC foundation. Those are my external prod foundations. That's actually defined as a foundation group. And I can track all the VMs and everything going on into here. And if you've seen this before, if you're a Tanzu Platform customer, you've seen Health Watch. This is kind of like this next generation of Health Watch that we've been building. And we can kind of see all these different telemetry views that we see. Like we can track all the org, like utilization, space utilization. What's kind of really cool about this is we can see like who's using the most in kind of a singular view, and then say like, hey, like these solution architects are using a lot. Maybe we need to go talk to them from a platform engineering team and say, hey, can you turn some stuff down? And maybe tech marketing, which is my team, so I guess I'm in trouble too. Things like that, which are pretty cool. We also have, if I scroll over here, it's not like in this like super zoom in here, but we get logs as well. So we can see the platform level logs coming in, which is nice because we can see it from all the different foundations, and we can get alerts and things of that nature. One of my favorite things, if you've been in this space, and this is what we talk about services, right? So, this screen here. All right, we talk about services. We talk about spinning all these services up on the fly, like Postgres or MySQL or whatever. It's nice for you to see these, because when we have multiple of these foundations, at scale, there's not really a good UI to see those currently. So you're kind of going in command line, you're running commands to try to grep for service instances, but it's really cool to see that in Hub, because I've actually used it already doing upgrades where in one of my foundations, I had no easy way to see how many like Postgres instances I had, because I was going to upgrade the Postgres plan. So I could easily go into the service offering here and look for Postgres on demand, and then we can see I have all these different plans out there. So this would be another helpful view. If you're doing that Postgres update, you have everything here in one place, and you can say, all right, these are all these Postgres databases. You can see what plan they're on. They all need to upgrade to Postgres, 20. I have no idea what versions Postgres is on. And then you can individually contact those teams. And the services, like publishing your own services, that's where this functionality will go in 10.3, so you can expose that as well. So that's just a quick view of Hub. Like we could probably spend an hour or 2 on Hub, but we're getting close on time. So are there any more questions that we want to cover?
Can you see there, so you can see if there's bound apps, but can you see if there's any apps that are no longer being used? There's no client requests, inbound?
So we can see some of that. We also have this business app view too here, where we can wire up all the apps and services into a kind of like a topology view as well, which this was what I tried to show earlier. And let me zoom in here. So we can see all that, but we can actually get down into the individual app layer as well. So let's go back to that. That's a little crazy on that zoom. So let's see, what was the one we were just using? All right, well, this one's down. Let's just look at it. What's going on with it? Oh, come on. Oh, well, it's down, so maybe it's not reporting. But yeah, you could see some of that in here as well, running.
Services.
So we have some properties. We're starting to get some app instances in here as well, and then whatever services are bound as well, so you can see that too. Additionally, too, in the Apps Manager view, you can look at the incoming requests and outbound requests, so you could also see that if it's actually getting traffic or not too. So, and then even like from a cleanup perspective, you can look at things of like, when was the app last pushed or last touched? So that's a common practice that we deployed back in the day to look to see if, if this app hasn't been deployed in like 6 months or a year, maybe it doesn't need to be there. Yeah, maybe it's gone. Maybe we'll just run a bash script and say power off, and then see if somebody else, right? And then maybe if they've been powered off for like 6 months, then we go ahead and delete it because they've been off for a while, and if worst case they just push their app again, right? But we need to, when working in reality, you only have so much compute, and you can't just infinitely scale unless you're like Amazon or something. Who knows, right? But yeah, that's that. Any other questions? Yeah. Oh. I'm not 100% on that, but I could follow up with our product management team and see what's going on there. But yeah, I've heard that before, so I probably know where that's coming from. Yeah.
So when it comes to rooting applications and services that are no longer being used, is there some way that we can tie that into like VCF automation or ARIA, as it were?
Yeah, so you can wire in like logs and stuff. You want to send those to like I guess VCF logs or ARIA logs or whatever. But there were, I think, potentially even integrations still around for wiring that up. You probably could run, like if you wanted to, you could probably build a script or two to run from ARIA automation to say, hey, like go, look for, underutilized apps and just run that. Like there's nothing stopping it from wiring that in there.
So it would probably be some kind of creation of a super metric to pull that in some way.
Yeah, and then if you wanted to, like, I guess, what's the current, the like VCO scripts or VRO scripts or ARIA, like if you wanted to make an automation to like run that, you could probably then, it's been a little while since I've dug into that deeply, but I think you could then like trigger a job or an automation to run off that metric or something, if I remember correctly. But yeah.
And for logs from the applications, you mentioned how we can get that integrated into ARIA.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any way that we can forward that off to an external logging server that's inside of the VCF?
Yeah. So you can basically forward it to anything that accepts syslog or OTel, like the standard logging outputs. A lot of our customers forward it to many things, so they may have to forward certain logs to a security, like a SIM, and then they might have like a log insight or a Splunk or a whatever running that's like their general log purpose collection tool. And then they might have point solutions too for different categories of workloads as well. But then if you have like a more of something that collects OTel, like APM style tool, we have OTel support as well. So those tools can just scrape the OTel endpoints and get all the telemetry out of that as well. And that's where some of the hub tooling is using that as well. And we're getting some of that out of the box, but hub's not really meant to be like this super extreme like performance tooling. It's just more like, let's get you some base level telemetry, and then you can, if you want to, you can send it to a more advanced tool as well. Any other questions? We got a few more minutes left, so hang around. Yeah, sure.
Is the Tanzu Data Intelligence, this might be something that we have to tomorrow to hear about, but is that going to be included with VCF standard, or is that going to be an add-on and we have to
I believe Tanzu Data Intelligence is an add-on. It's a separate SKU. Yeah, but it's officially announced tomorrow. But we can follow up to. I'm pretty certain it's a separate SKU and add-on service. Yeah. Any other questions? No. All right. Well, if there's no other questions, we can. If you want to come up, afterwards and chat, we're more than happy to. Thank you so much for coming out and staying so long. I know it's a long session for first session of the day, so thanks again.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.